All right, bear with me for a second here. I'm going to stabilize this. There we go. Oh. There we go. Okay. So what we're going to do here is just going to take you through what I did every year during the lockdown, or not every year, every day. Sorry. It's what I did every day during lockdown. A little cold. And this is the activity of the spiritual special forces. This is what it's all about. So the first thing is we got to get ourselves in the right mindset. And once we're in the right mindset, we're clandestine operators. So we go in and we circle the camp, We circle the camp. And what I mean by that is we surround everything with love. And the way we're going to do it is we're going to get back to the root, to the first principle idea, and then we're going to bring forth the bread of life, and we're going to know that truth that sets the captives free. And this is what we do. So we are clandestine mystics. And one spiritual special forces operator can raise the consciousness of an entire state, or even greater than that. Start with yourself, and then when you work out from there, everything around you will begin to radiate at that higher vibration. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to get myself into that space. Now, one of the things I like to do is I put the whole armor of God on, and the first thing is the belt of truth, okay? So here we go. God is all in all. There is no other. Okay, there's the belt of truth. Now the breastplate of righteousness, that's the right-mindedness of God. That is the knowledge of the Father. I live, move, and have my being in the spiritual substance of divine love, which is the body of God. There, I got the breastplate of righteousness now. Now the shoe shot of peace. See, I'm absolutely not concerned because I know wonderful things are happening. I'm in a peaceful position of authority. When you're in peace, the Lord is with you. Now, we're going to use the shield of faith. And the way that I like to do this is I like to call in Yahushua's name. Call forth that which is true to be revealed. All hidden knowledge is revealed. Now I know that the helmet of salvation means I'm coming from the mind of God. I'm coming from the source. I radiate from the knowledge that the Father knows about me. That's why it is well with thee. And the sword of the Spirit, I operate in the Spirit with the knowledge of the Father, speaking the truth. And I'm going to take that sword of the Spirit and I'm going to cut down every mortal lie from here to about a 4-mile radius back to the condo. All right? Now, this is the practice. This is the routine. So what I do, and what I encourage you to do, and I might walk a little extra here, is this is going to be extremely repetitive and boring for your mortal mind to handle. But this is the nature of doing reps, isn't it? So when you train, do you do reps or do you just do one set? See, I like to crush the reps. And so repetitioning the mind, repetition, is repatterning the mind after the knowledge of the Father in this case. So here we go. Start with the tap, snap of the fingers, or some metronome timing. We're going to get on timing here. This is the PTT. We're doing our PTT every day. Perfect our timing technique. Okay? First thing we do is we establish a time. 2, 3, 4, and 1. 3, 4, and 1. 3, 4, and 1. Okay, good. Now, in the middle of that, we just insert the truth we know to begin with. God is all, God is love. 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 Now, God is all, God is love. What's coming to my awareness, God is all, God is love, are the terrors and dreams of the day. Whatever's going on in the world that people believe in. What do I know to be true about that from God's perspective, not from their perspective? God knows no evil. That's the next thing that came to mind. God knows no evil. God knows no evil. God shares his power with none other, and it is good. Okay? There's the bread of life. God shares his power with none other, and it is good. So now I'm going to dissolve matter within myself. Matter is a state of consciousness where thought becomes frozen in time and space, and it appears in our extended body as a material construct, the matrix. God shares his power with none other, and God declares it's good. God shares its power with none other, and God declares it's good. God shares his power with none other and declares it's good. I am speaking onto those thoughts the truth. God declares it's good. God shares his power with none other, and God declares it's good. And I'm going to keep going from this position, and I'm going to keep speaking what I know to be true from God's perspective to every thought that comes to my awareness. Now, this is very similar to what Dr. Len did with Ho'oponopono as he looked over every patient's profile and he said, "I'm sorry, I love you, please forgive me, thank you," with the Ho'oponopono, and they began to get well, or the whole place started to clear up. You see, he took responsibility for everything happening in his projected hologram, which is what I recommend you do as well. So what I'm doing is I'm looking at the thoughts of men. These are the ideas that are being presented to us about the plans and the agendas that are going on. These are ideas, but they are false ideas because God didn't create them. And so every idea that comes to mind is the same as when Dr. Len looked at a patient's profile. I feed it with the word, the spoken word of truth. It is only God that speaks truth. Mortals are incapable of speaking truth. Because once you speak truth, the immortality begins to manifest, you see? Now, God's man is not deceived. God's man knows no trickery. God's man is obedient only to the law of good. There's the bread. Third thing. First thing's the obsession, second is fluff, third is the bread. God's man is obedient only to the law of good, or God. God's man is obedient only to the law of good, or God. God's man is obedient only to the law of good, or God. Now, in my imagination, I'm love bubbling up this whole area. All of Sheboygan, in fact, all the state of Wisconsin now. God's man is obedient only to the law of good. Do you see? God's man is obedient only to the law of good. I know the truth within every man, woman, and child. God's man, which is the only man ever created, God's manifest, is obedient only to the law of good because God is the only law in existence and the only manifest in existence. Therefore, there's no room for any other. Everything else is a dream of the carnal mind. God's man is obedient only to the law of good. And you can take these that I'm using and you can write them down if you want to do this, and you can head on out to your area or do it right from the comfort of your closet or your room or whatever you want to do it. I like to do it while I'm walking because I'm enjoying the flow, and I'm also circling the camp and dropping these truth bombs. And they're absolute truth bombs, and they destroy error for miles and miles. God's man is obedient only to the law of good. God's man is obedient only to the law of good. God's man is obedient only to the law of good. Now, I keep doing this until I feel settled in my heart that I've put the issue to rest. All I have to do is treat this day, its own worries and concerns, with that bread until I feel settled in my heart. And then it's not up to me anymore. My job is to settle it in my thought until my heart comes to peace with it. Until I agree that it's true. So God's man is obedient only to the law of good. Here's a good one for you. Let's talk about the idea of governance. Hello. Hi. So governance. That which governs all is divine love. That which governs all is divine love. God's decree is for the will of good. God's decree is for the will of good. God sentences man only to the chastening of divine love. There's the bread. God sentences man only to the chastening of divine love. God sentences man only to the chastening of divine love. God sentences man only to the chastening of divine love. In other words, God only brings about that which manifests divine love. God sentences man to the chastening of divine love. God sentences man only to the chastening of divine love. God sentences man only to the chastening of divine love. And we know that's for purification. God sentences man only to the chastening of divine love. Well, what do you think happens to a perverse nation? God sentences man only to the chastening of divine love. God sentences man only to the chastening of divine love. Okay, so now let's talk about those who pursue. Those who pursue. The only thing that pursues man is divine love. The only thing that pursues man is divine love. The only thing that pursues man is divine love. God's justice is always good. God's justice is always good. God's justice is always good. Injustice has no foothold nor authority to exist. There's the bread. Injustice has no foothold or authority to exist. Injustice has no foothold or authority to exist. Again, I'm saying this until I feel clear in my heart about all the concepts and ideas going around in that matrix. Injustice has no foothold or authority to exist. Injustice has no foothold or authority to exist. And when I say foothold, I mean standing. The legal term is standing. Injustice has no standing or authority to exist. Injustice has no standing or authority to exist. The Bible is basically law. And so when you look at the word foothold and you see the word foot, the word foot means law. Okay? So injustice has no foothold, no standing, and no authority to exist. Injustice has no standing, no law, and no authority to exist. Injustice has no law and no authority to exist. Injustice has no law or authority to exist. Injustice has no law or authority to exist. Injustice has no law or authority to exist. All right, let's talk about the idea of disease. God's harmony is the only substance within man. God's harmony is the only substance within man. God's DNA is divine love. God's DNA is divine love. God's DNA is divine love. Man reflects only God's spiritual substance. There's the bread. Man reflects, and I mean mankind, I mean manifest creation, that is the mother, woman, child, all of these seeming mortals that you perceive. There's only one life. You're dreaming in sin, because manifest creation reflects only the substance of God. Man reflects only the substance of God. And God is a word for good. Man reflects only the substance of 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 good. Very well. Now, what comes to my mind next is the belief in media and censorship. So what does God know to be true about communication? God communicates direct to man. God communicates direct to man. God communicates direct to man. There is no obstruction for man's receivership of wisdom. There is no obstruction for man's receivership of wisdom. Wisdom is the only thing that reaches man. Wisdom is the only thing that reaches man. Now, when you talk about arms in the Bible, you talk about, you see, the connectivity. Wisdom is the only thing that reaches man. In other words, man is only connected to wisdom. Wisdom is the only thing that reaches man. Wisdom is the only thing that reaches man. Wisdom is the only thing that reaches man. You see, we don't push against the problem. We don't think about the problem. We know the solution. And by the process of negation, there is no problem. Wisdom is the only thing that reaches man. Wisdom is the only thing that reaches man. You see, you should use these, and you should treat yourself for the ideas that are coming to your consciousness. Wisdom is the only thing that reaches man. Wisdom is the only thing that reaches man. Let's talk about the idea of inflation. Let's talk about the idea of scarcity, poverty, deficiency, right? It's all the same. God's man knows no deficiency because he is one with God. God's man knows no deficiency because he is one with God. God's man knows no deficiency because he is one with God. There is not a single element of error in a spiritual idea. There is not a single element of error in a spiritual idea. God has always and will always meet every human need with divine love. There's the bread. God has, does, and will always meet every human need with divine love. God has, does, and will always meet every human need with divine love. God has, does, and will always meet every human need with divine love. There's your bread. This is what you speak onto the thoughts of scarcity coming to you. And you know the truth until it gets settled in your heart and it sets you free. The truth sets you free, not you. You can't add anything to God or take anything away from God. All you can do is reveal heaven that's already here. You never left heaven. You're coming out of a dream. You're coming out of a dream. God always has, does, and will meet every human need with divine love. God always has, does, and will meet every human need with divine love. How does that feel? See how the sun came back out? Hey, you see? Do you see what happens? You see, the whole world is your extended body. God always has, does, and will meet every human need with divine love. Do you see what happens when you are tempted with the appearance of lack, and when you settle it in your heart of what is true according to God? Do you know how powerful you are? God always has, does, and will meet every human need with divine love. God always has, does, and will meet every human need for divine love. Do you know what you pray for others happens for you? Do you know that when you repeat this so often that it becomes your natural instinct and you fire it off automatically every time you think of the thought of lack, that you become the conduit for good in all the world, for you to be the light of this world? God always has, does, and will meet every human need with divine love. I speak to the deficiency coming to your thought right now. God always has, will, and does meet every human need with divine love. God always has, does, and will meet every human need with divine love. Claim it. It's your inheritance. Good. So, what comes to mind next? Hey, the idea, well, I feel pretty clear. See, I'm feeling very clear. I feel very clear. So, this is the idea here, is that when we do this, we get clear within ourselves. We're creating repetition. We're training ourselves to be powerful ministers for the gospel of good. And therefore we are the environment wherever we show up. I don't get influenced by the environment. I am the environment. I change consciousness and my world reflects it. It's not the other way around. You're the heir to the throne when you know the truth, because the truth is what, through your humility, brings you there. See, your humility to submit yourself to the truth is what does the work. And this is a process and a practice of humility. I can do nothing of myself. It is the Father in me that doeth the works. And I maintain the continuity of that which is pleasing in the sight of the Lord. And that is the work of a spiritual special forces operator. It is the highest work you can do. There's nothing else you can do to change what you think is going on out there that's going to be of any good for you, because you're only sustaining and reinforcing the very thing by pushing against it. You know the truth, and the truth sets you free. That is the formula. And I call you to operate in that capacity and to wear the crown of glory, because those who come to know, love, and trust the Father have completed their mission on this trajectory. You see? That's what you're here for, and this is the work.